Gentlemen, good afternoon. And I request the fifth batch to continue with the error estimation. I think Sushant and Sriristi has to continue, and Shushma has to continue with the error probability, error
Sir,
estimation.
Srishti is not available today, sir. Is Srishti?
What happened?
Like she's out. She's in out of station, sir. Like she has network issues.
Sushma, the thing is, you ask them to contact personally and get the permission earlier. Don't reveal during classes. It won't be
Oh,
the good practice.
okay, sir.
Those, those who
I
wanted to
asked her to inform, sir, but she is in journey. Like she's out of station, sir.
making call and making communication, what is the issue with that? If it is feasible to share with Sushma, then what is the constraint to share with the faculty?
Sir, like I will ask her to inform you, sir.
Okay. Yes, who is going to start with the error estimation?
Me, sir. Sushma.
Yes, start
Yes.
your this.
Like good afternoon, sir. This is Sushma, and now I am discussing a brief note on, like, short note on what is error analysis. Um, the error of a quantity, and it is the difference between its true value and approximate value. And now I am discussing different types of errors. One is gross error, and next blunders, and inherent errors. Now I'm going to discuss about gross errors. These errors occurs due to the human factors involved in the measurement of the parameter, and generally the fault of the person using the instruments is like such as incorrect reading, incorrect recording, and incorrect use, etc. And to get, like, they can be avoided only by taking care in using and reading all the instruments. And I'm discussing some of the examples occurs in gross errors. These errors due to carelessness of a user while noting down the reading, and also errors due to the selection of instrument with improper range. And next I'm going with the blunders. These errors are also called human errors and are also caused by humans' mistakes and oversight, and can be minimized by taking care during scientific investigations. These errors will add to the total error of the underlying problem and can significantly affect the accuracy of the solution. And I'm discussing some examples, like common types are lack of understanding of the problem and wrong assumptions, and overlooking some basic assumptions required for formulating the model, and error in deriving the mathematical equation or using a model that does not describe adequately the physical system under study, and selecting a wrong numerical method for solving the mathematical model, and also selecting a wrong algorithm for implementing the numerical method, and making mistakes in the computer program. That's it. And now I'm going to discuss inherent errors, mistake, and also some common types of mistakes in data input and wrongly guessing the initial values. And I'm going to discuss about real life examples in human errors. Like, as we already know, Bhopal gas tragedy, it was concluded that the incident was also caused by the excessive amount of water, like 1,000 to 2,000 pounds, that entered in the tank. And I'm going to discuss about inherent errors. Yeah, errors that are present in the data that are input to the model are called inherent errors. They are also called input errors, and they are classified into two types: data errors and conversion errors. And like, when performing computations with algebraic operations among approximate numbers, we naturally carry to some extent that the errors of the original data into the final results. Like such errors are called inherent errors or inherent error of the operation. Like for example, if we take like x equals to 0.333 and y equals to 3.1416, be two approximate numbers for exact number 1 by 3 and pi. Like obviously, if we perform like an algebraic operation between these two numbers, the error will introduce in the final result accordingly. And now I'm going to discuss accuracy of numbers in numerical methods. We have two types and like exact numbers. The numbers of the type 8, 1, 1 by 2, 3 by 4 and 9.75 will be in category of exact numbers. And approximate numbers like the numbers 1 by 3 like 0.333 and pi equals to 3.1415 and so on, like does not have any finite decimal expansion, and hence they are approximated to some finite digits called as significant digits and for the purpose of calculations. And like we used to get some question like why is error measured in numerical methods? To determine the accuracy of numerical results and to develop stopping criteria for iterative algorithms defined as the difference between the true value in a calculation and approximate value found using in a numerical method. And like what is true error in numerical analysis? Like it is defined as the difference between the true value in a calculation and the approximate value found using in a numerical method, and formula is true error equals to true value minus approximate value. And now I'm going to discuss some types of errors while occurs in programming, like syntax errors. These errors occurs due to the violation of any grammatical rules causes syntax errors, and it is also known as compilation errors. Like a syntax error may be detected during program execution, and like see here, uh, here character vector is not terminated properly, like single code is missing at last. And next, logical errors. A logical error or logical error, it is a mistake in program source code and that results in incorrect or unexpected behavior. It is a type of runtime error that may simply produce the wrong input or may cause a program to crash while running, and many different types of programming mistakes can cause logic errors. See here, like while writing a code, here we should not use 1 equals to, here we have to use double equals to, so that the program will execute the correct input. And also here see, we have to use two types of brackets, like in two brackets. We should not use these brackets in programming the language. Next, we are discussing runtime errors. A runtime error in a program, it is an error that occurs while the program is running after being successfully compiled. And runtime errors are also commonly known as bugs and are often found during the debugging process before the software is released. And common examples including dividing by zero, calling invalid functions, or not handling certain input correctly. And now I am discussing how to estimate the error in Taylor series. Like
Yes,
we can.
from
Yes,
your
sir.
end, you're moving the slides, or from some other end, you're moving?
Like I took control, sir. Like
You took control. Okay, you go to the next slide. Go to the
yes, sir.
slides.
That's it.
That okay. Thank you, Sushma. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Sriristi, who is going to continue? Sriristi, either Sriristi or Tushant?
Sir,
Tushant,
myself, sir,
sir.
Tushant.
Tushant.
Tushant, yes, go take decision and continue the session. You try to converge with 5 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yes. sorry, I'm going to talk about major accidents due to error. So some of the important accidents are Tirak 25. So it was caused to two different errors, and it resulted in multiple massive overdoses of radiation, resulting in serious injuries. And an Iraqi Scud missile which hit Saudi Arabia after like a Patriot missile defense failure. So this was caused due to the calculation error of 687 meters. So the wrong calculation of the distance resulted due to the drift, and corresponding distance after offset resulted to this accident. And one of the major accidents in NASA's history is the Mars Climate Orbiter failure in 1999. So this was a $125 million project, and the cause for this accident was because due to the conversion of the measurements. So the NASA scientists used the English system of English system, but the computers were programmed in the way that used the metric system. So the English system, it was given as pound per second, but the metric system followed Newton per second. So in short, we can say that the spacecraft was lost due to translation. And the short flight of Ariane 5. So it was mentioned in 1992. So this was caused by one of the major errors of that time. So it was caused by floating bit integer. So error. So this was caused because a 64-bit floating integer was stored into a 12-bit integer. So the computers on board was interrupted by the flight data, and it got corrupted, and the mission failed, and it ended in the loss of around $500 million. So I will be continuing with the requirements for an error estimator. So some of the requirements are that the error estimate should be accurate in the sense that the predicted error and the actual error should be close enough. And the error estimate should be asymptotically correct, and ideally the error estimate should yield guaranteed and sharp upper and lower bounds for the actual error. And the error estimator should be computationally simple with the error estimate, and inexpensive to compute when measured in total computations of the analysis. And the error estimator should be robust with regard of a wide range of applications, including nonlinear analysis, and implementation of the error estimator should be possible to steer to adaptive refinement process. And let's talk about explicit error estimators. So explicit error estimators involve the direct computation of the interior element residuals that jumps from the element boundaries to the element boundaries to find the estimate for the error. And the implicit error estimators involve the solution of auxiliary boundary values whose solution yields to approximation of the actual error. And let's talk about error estimate for Newton-Raphson method. So Newton-Raphson method, R is equals to xn plus epsilon n, where epsilon n is the error. So you can also write the equation as xn is equals to R minus epsilon n. And similarly for after n plus 1 iterations, the equation will become R is equals to xn plus 1 plus epsilon n plus 1. It can also be written like this. So after we substitute these equations in Newton-Raphson method, we get that xn plus n equals to R minus epsilon n plus 1, which is equals to R minus epsilon n minus f of R minus epsilon n by f dash of R minus epsilon n. So this can also be rearranged as epsilon n plus 1 can be found out that epsilon n is equals to f of R minus epsilon n and f dash of R minus epsilon n. So as we proceed, we expand it with f of x plus xn and f dash of xn with a Taylor series. We get the equation that f of R minus epsilon n is equals to f of R minus epsilon n, and goes on like that. So after that, the first term on the right hand side is 0 and the R is the root. And similarly, we have f dash of R of minus epsilon n can also be written as expanded using Taylor series. So here we have the first two terms and are assumed to be non-zero, and hence if we substitute in the equation, we get that epsilon n plus 1 is equals to minus epsilon square n f double dash R by f dash of R, and it keeps on going. So we neglect all the terms with higher power with epsilon n and the leading term, and hence we can neglect epsilon n power cube and all other higher powers. So epsilon n plus 1 is equals to minus epsilon n square f double dash of R by f dash of R. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, very good. And for Sushma and Tushant, if the error estimation is good, it replicates in how it replicates on the results. What is the need to find the appropriate error? What is the need to do the error estimation accurately? The question for Sushma and Tushant or any other fellow from the 5th batch, you can answer.
So we need accurate answers for everything.
Okay.
For higher
to
level.
get the correct answer, we have to estimate the error.
Once you got the right error, it can be adjusted with the accurate results. In order to get the precise results, we are in need of accurate error. Whether it might be a system error or it might be the error in the instruments or it might be the error in the calculation, whatever it might be. In view of finite element analysis, you are going to deal as residual, and if the residual you are well enough to find a very good residual, then you're accurate. You are trying to approach the accurate results. For that, we are in need of accurate error estimation. Yes. Okay. Good. Thank you. And only one person left in the 5th batch. And yes, I request the last batch to continue with your presentation.
So yes, sir. Is it visible?
Yes. Give me F5.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
You're audible, Vikram.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Of course.
Just check. Hey, Vignesh, where are the controls?
I've given to you, right?
Yeah, given, but the slides are not moving. That's why I asked.
Vikram, is it moving?
From my side, it's not.
Yes, you can request Vignesh to move the slides. No
Yeah,
issues.
I'll change it, Vikram. You go ahead.
Okay. So, hello guys, it's Vikram. Good morning, sir. We are going to discuss about condition numbers. Vignesh, next slide. So, coming to the introduction of condition number, in the field of numerical analysis, the condition number of a function measures how much the output value of a function can change for the small change in input argument. This is used to measure how sensitive a function is to changes or errors in the input and how much error in the output results from an error in the input. Very frequently, one is solving the inverse problem. If given f of x equal to y, the condition number of the local inverse must be used. In linear regression, the condition number of the moment matrix can be used as a diagnostic of multicollinearity. So what is this means is the if for a particular problem, if we change if with a small value of the dependent variable, it if its value changes at a small amount or large amount, it will be there will be two different types of problems which will be discussed in further session. Next slide. Hello, Vignesh. The condition number is an application of the derivative and is formally defined as the value of the asymptotic worst case relative change in the output for a relative change in the input. The function is the solution of a problem and the arguments are the data in problems. The condition number is frequently applied to questions in linear algebra, in which case the derivative is straightforward, but the error could be in many different directions and is thus computed from the geometry of matrix. More generally, condition numbers can be defined and for non-linear functions in several variables. So this is some means theory part, but we can elaborate this through an example, which we will discuss afterwards. Next slide. So what can be determined by condition number? A problem with a low condition number is said to be well conditioned, while a problem with the high condition number is said to be ill conditioned. In non-mathematical terms, an ill conditioned problem is one here for the small change in inputs, the independent variables or the right hand side of an equation. There is a large change in answer of the dependent variables. This means that the correct solution answer to the equation becomes hard to find. The condition number is a property of a problem. So what is said here, we will just simplify it. Vignesh, next slide. So let's make it simple. If to determine whether it is a well conditioned or ill conditioned problem, if we make small change in input which results in a small change in value of dependent variable, so that may be an answer. Or if it is a inconditioned problem, if we make small change in input and that results in a large change in value of dependent variable, so the answers may not be so the value which we have obtained may not be the answer. This will check from an example. So now moving to the rule of thumb. So what the rule of thumb states as a rule of thumb, if the condition number kappa of A is equal to 10 raised to power k, then you may lose up to k digits of accuracy on top of what would be lost to the numerical methods due to loss of precision from arithmetic methods. However, the condition number does not give the exact value of the maximum inaccuracy that may occur in the algorithm. It generally just bounds it with an estimate whose computed value depends on the choice of the norm to measure the inaccuracy. So to make it simple, this definition, Vignesh, next slide. So this can be simplified as if condition number of A is equal to 10 raised to power k, taking log both sides. So by logarithmic identity, log of condition number of A equal to k. So here is a little correction. Instead of 10, we have to write it as condition of A. So log of condition of A equal to k. So this can be finalized as so we can make a general statement that log of condition of A equal to k, which means that total number of significant digits lost from the main matrix A. Vignesh, next slide. So talking more about condition number paired with the problem are any number of algorithms that can be used to solve the problem. That is to calculate the solution. Some algorithms have a property called backward stability. In general, a backward stable algorithm can be expected to accurately solve well condition problems. Numerical analysis gives formula for the condition numbers of problems and identify known backward stable algorithms. Ignish. So what does the condition number tell us? The condition number is a good indicator of how close is the matrix to be singular. The larger the condition number, the closer we are to the singularity, which we have discussed earlier. It is also very useful in assessing the accuracy of solutions to linear systems. In practice, we don't really calculate the condition number. It's merely estimated to perhaps within an order of magnitude. Vignesh. So moving on to the properties of condition number. For any matrix A, condition number of A must be greater than equal to 1 for matrix identity matrix A, condition of I equal to 1
Yes,
as we.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, Vikram. Next person, you continue the presentation.
Sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, you slowly move, Vignesh. Yes, you go to the last slide, which was presented by Vikram.
Sir, I have to means explain the
Just
problem.
Yes, just a minute. Just a minute. Go to the yes, the slide which yes.
This one.
Yes. Yes, Vikram. Then you make a brief note and you continue the presentation.
Okay, sir. So for any matrix A and scalar gamma, condition of gamma A equal to condition of A, and for any diagonal matrix D, we quote it as dia in parenthesis di, which is means and the condition number of D will be maximum of determinant of di divided by minimum of determinant of di. So what I will discuss till now, we will means quickly learn it from an example. So let's consider as A means Ax equal to C, where matrix where we will make a small change in A, and if we make a small change in matrix A, and it will whether it will be give a small change in matrix C or not, this will be we will be determined. So what we have discussed earlier, that if there is a small change in matrix A and it results in a small change in matrix C, so it is well conditioned. And if it is small change in matrix A and results in a large change in matrix C, then it will be ill conditioned. So for example, we take it as a matrix A as a 400 minus 201 and minus 800 and 401, and value of C matrix will be 200 and minus 200. So while putting this in calculator, we get the value as x1 equal to minus 100 and x2 equal to minus 200. So just make a small change in matrix A. Let's make 400 as 401. So difference is only 1, which is small compared to the magnitude of this single element. So while putting these values in the calculator, we get as x1 equal to 40,000 and x2 equal to 79,800. So the difference between the results are too large. So by this we can say that it is ill conditioned. But there is a different another way to which we are learned like right now. Vignesh, next. So above problem we can do it by
Just a minute.
condition.
Go back to the past slide, Vignesh. Go back to the past slide. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, this is belongs to your handwriting, Vikram.
Yes, sir.
Yes, good. Go ahead, Vignesh.
So we can do the previous problem by condition number. So condition number denoted as a COND of matrix A, which is read as condition number of matrix A. If condition number of matrix, so as we discussed in the properties, previous slide. So if condition number of matrix A is approximately near to the 1, so it is called as well conditions. And if it condition number of matrix A is greater than equal to 1, it is called as ill conditioned. So formula for calculating condition number is condition number A, and this is read as norm of matrix of A at infinity. So this single into norm of inverse of A at infinity. So this is multiplication, just to note. Vignesh, next slide. So what is matrix now? So let's consider matrix A as 1, 2, 0, 1. So what is norm of A at infinity? It is the largest absolute sum of our system of matrix. So in this particular example, the sum of absolute elements of row 1 is mod of 1 plus mod of 2 equal to 3, and of row 2 is mod of 0 plus mod of 1 equal to 1. So between these two, the row 1 has the highest, so therefore its a norm of matrix A at infinity will be 3. Vignesh, next slide. Just come to the previous one. So if someone asks you about the norm of matrix of A at 1, so it generally means that you have to just add the elements of matrix, given matrix row, first row of given matrix. So here norm of matrix of A at 1 is will be sum of all elements in row 1 which equal to 3, and similarly for 2 which is equal to 1. Vignesh, next slide. Sir, this is pretty much clear. Hello, Vignesh, previous slide. Hello, sir. Hello.
Yes, Vikram. Yes, it is. It is good. It is good. Go ahead.
Vignesh, previous slide. So on the right hand side, as we know that means by the formula of norm, it's norm of matrix A into norm of inverse of A. So that's why to find out those two values of the original problem. So as we know, if matrix A is ABCD, then inverse of matrix A is 1 by determinant of A into just flipping this D into D minus B minus C and minus A. So we have discussed this formula earlier in the first year and JEE preparation too. So now for A inverse, our original matrix was this 400 minus 201 minus 801 and 401. So determinant of A which is come out to be minus 400. So inverse of A will be 1 by minus 400 into is that any no in 1 by minus 400 into this 401 into 201 801 by 801 and 400. So our inverse matrix is come out to be minus 1.003 minus 0.503 minus 2 and minus 1. So now finding norm of A inverse at infinity. So as we discussed earlier, to so that here the a largest absolute sum of the row is coming out to be this. See here, this is norm of matrix A at infinity. So we have to take here the largest absolute sum of that original matrix, this one 400 and minus 201. So here as it is minus, according to definition it should be an absolute sum. So to here row 1 it's coming out to be 400 plus 201 which is equal to 601, and for row 2 it's coming out to be 801 plus 401 which is equal to so here should be 1202 means correction. So here the mod of norm of matrix A at infinity is 1202, and norm of inverse of A at infinity is 3. So by formula condition of
Vikram, your determinant value of A is either minus 400.
so sorry sir, what?
Your determinant of A is equal to minus 400 or minus 601.
No sir, means
I think that
what
is
I had
calculation. It should be minus 601. Okay, go ahead. No issues.
no sir, no sir.
Yes.
The our by definition largest absolute sum of row. So in
Okay.
so in original matrix this one at the top, original matrix A,
Okay.
which I have written here is norm of matrix of A at infinity. So we have to consider this one. So
okay. Among two. Okay. Go ahead.
so
Go ahead.
this is bit confusing, sir. Means here is the most confusing part. Means here we means just
This
to
is
know.
not a conventional. Yes, here the determinant A is not a conventional method. It was taken from the largest summation in the respective rows, right?
Yes, sir.
But
So
you have written that is 400 into 401 minus 801 into 201. That is not for not the sake of calculation you written.
Sorry, sir, I didn't got your point.
No, no. What is the value of determinant of A? Whether how you calculate as minus 400. Determinant of A.
Uh,
Vignesh, you calculate and tell me what is the determinant of A. Siddharthan, what is the determinant of
yes,
A
sir.
value?
It's coming wrong. Minus 601 should be.
Yes. That is what I am saying. Okay, no issues. You correct it and post it in the group. Once the presentation is over, you correct this page and continue. Now you continue the presentation.
Okay.
Please.
So
Efforts.
by this
Good.
by this formula, the condition number of A is coming to be 3603, which is much more greater than 1. So from here we can say that it's ill conditioned. Vignesh, next slide. So what is the rule of thumbs plays a role here? So as we discussed, log of condition of A is equal to total number of significant decimals of accuracy lost. So in our problem, we got condition of A is 3603. So taking log of 3603, which comes out to be 3.6, which means we have lost almost 3.6 significant digits of accuracy. Vignesh, can you please come at the original problem? Means again means stop. So in this here our answer is itself a 3 significant digits. So if it is more than the 3.6, so it
means lower report is a sample.
All about.
Valley report sir. Underwaring sir. I will show how to fill. Composite lab.
நீ வச்சு நான் பாத்துக்கிறேன்.
Sir, after putting sir.
Vikram, you continue.
Okay, sir. So by it's saying that we have almost lost 3.6 significant digits, and our answer here itself a 3 significant digit figure. So by this our case doesn't satisfy. That's why it's ill condition. Thank you, sir. So I request Vijay to continue take on the request.
Yes, you continue, Vignesh.
Vijay, can you ask once again? Control.
Yeah, I asked for control.
Yeah, can you ask one more time?
Hello. Yeah, good evening. I am Vijay. I am going to explain about the condition numbers for nonlinear functions. Condition number of a function measures how much the output value can change for the small change in input. And the nonlinear functions are functions whose graph is not a straight line, and the slope of the nonlinear function is different at each point. So I'm gonna discuss two things called forward error and the backward error. So we're gonna do this first in the context of root finding of a nonlinear function. Let the problem be f of x equal to 0. On solving, we get R is the exact solution, and let RA be our approximate solution. And so the forward error is defined as the difference between the exact answer and the computed answer. So you find an approximation in the root. The difference between that and the real roots are the forward error. Now the computed answer RA is the solution to some perturbed problem. Suppose we are solving f of x equal to 0, and we find that r is the root of the f of x, which is approximately equal to Ra. Then when you plug in the value of the approximate root value, you will not get 0 because Ra is an approximate solution. And the backward error is the difference between the original problem and the perturbed problem. In other words, it is what we get when we plug in the approximate root in the perturbed problem. We get 0. But if we plug in the approximate root in the original problem, we will not get 0. We will get something close to 0. So let us see a numerical example on a cubic polynomial where the exact root is computed by calculator, which is 2 by 3, and through some iterative methods or some root finding algorithms, we find the approximate solution. Let it be Ra, and the forward error can be given as the distance between the exact solution and the approximate solution, and the backward error is what we get when we plug in the value of approximate root in f of x. So the condition number can also be defined as the maximum error magnification, and the condition number is greater than or equal to the ratio of the forward error to the backward error, and thus the condition number is the maximum error magnification. And what that means is that if the condition number is big, then small changes in the problem lead to big errors in the solution. That is how much small changes in the problem are magnified. A problem with large condition number is ill-conditioned. So the condition number is proportional to 1 divided by derivative at the root. We can see that the condition number depends on root of a function. So with this author suggests is that the conditioning can be different around different roots. Looking more in detail about the conditioning for the root finding problem, let us see the usual problem f of x equal to 0 with root r. We're gonna make a small change, so the problem becomes the perturbed problem. That is f of x plus epsilon g of x equal to 0. So we are not going to find the root of f of x anymore. We are going to find the roots for f of x plus epsilon g of x. So the root of the original problem is r, and the root of the perturbed problem is r plus del r. Taking that and plugging it into the perturbed problem, that is f of r plus del r. Hello. That is f of r plus del r plus epsilon g of r plus del r is equal to 0. Then we are expanding using Taylor series. The f term becomes f of r plus del r times f dash of r, and the g term becomes epsilon g of r plus del r times g dash of r, and the other terms are neglected since del r square is much smaller. Next slide, Vignesh, next slide.
You can change now. We know that r is the root of f of x, so the term f of r becomes 0, and we know that epsilon is small and f dash of r is not equal to 0. By rearranging this equation, we get that the absolute value of the forward error to the backward error is equal to approximately equal to 1 divided by f dash of r. And this tells us how error propagates from the input to the output. Now let us see an example for nonlinear function and analyze how much the output value of the function can change for small change in input argument. So let us
say the equation f of x equal to x cube minus 2x minus 5. Solving this cubic equation using calculator, we get x equal to 2.0946. This is the exact answer. Let's say again solving this cubic equation with some root finding algorithms like regular falsy method, we get x equal to 2.0939. That was our approximate answer. Let's say RA. Now the condition number is given by the ratio of the forward error to the backward error. That is the ratio of the distance between the exact root and the approximate root to the absolute value of f of RA. So the condition number for this equation is 0.096, which means for small change in input, the output value can change up to 1 by 0.096 times the previous output value. This is how we analyze the errors that propagate from the input to the output. Now, let's say f be a differentiable function which contains one variable, and the condition number can be given as mod of x of f dash of x by f of x. So let us derive this. We know that the condition number is the ratio of the forward error to the backward error, and the forward error is the relative change in x, that is f of x plus del x minus f of x by f of x, and the backward error is the relative change in x, that is x plus del x minus x by x. Next slide. Rearranging this equation, we get the condition number is equal to x by f of x times f of x plus del x minus f of x by del x. We know that the del x is very small and approaches 0. Thus, applying limit and the term f of x plus del x minus f of x by del x becomes the derivative of f of x. Thus, the condition number for a one variable differentiable function is mod of x of f dash of x by f of x. Now let us see an example. F of x equal to root x, where root x is the differentiable function and contains one variable x. From the formula mod of x of f dash of x by f of x, we get a condition number for root x equal to 1 by 2. And these are the condition numbers for some of the common elementary functions. These are derived from the formula mod of x of f dash of x by f of x. Now let's find the condition number for the function f, which has several variables. Let f be a differentiable function, and we know that the condition number is the ratio of the forward error to the backward error. The forward error is the relative change in f at the point x, that is norm of f of x plus norm of f of x plus del x minus f of x by norm of f of x. The backward error is the relative change in x, that is norm of del x by norm of x. Here the del x means it is a partial derivative of x, and we know that the del x is very small and approaches 0. So while applying limit, we get a condition number, and the further contents in the condition number, Vikash will carry on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Vijay Adhiraj. And already the time is 1:30. For me and Sushma, find an appropriate time. Either it might be in Thursday, tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. If it is flexible you to attend, then let me know. Else, we'll continue during as per our schedule. Monday 10:30 we'll meet. For me and Sushma. For me,
like
tomorrow
some of them are traveling to campus, sir, like they are coming to campus.
Okay.
So like Monday is possible, sir.
Monday.
Yeah, yes, sir. Like from
okay.
north.
Okay, no issues. We'll continue during Monday 10:30. There are 3 persons has to present. From the last batch, Vignesh and Vikash has to present, and from the 5th batch, Sri Drishti has to present. and ask them to present during Monday, and so that you can submit your last assignment during Monday.
Monday is the deadline for notes,
Monday
sir.
till 12 o'clock you can submit.
Okay, sir.
Before that, you convert. Yesterday itself, you some requested to extend with 3 more days, and along with that 3 more days, I have given 2 days. You can submit till Monday 12.
Okay, sir. I'll
Okay,
inform Srishti,
yes.
sir. Okay, sir.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen.